In this video, what we'll be doing here is we're going to follow behind what we have learned in the past video about styling our fonts using these three particular HTML elements. One we actually have our H1, our H2, and one paragraph tag. Each of these things we'll be using here, we'll be using to actually alter or edit how our texts are being displayed on our browser. So let's get started. Now, to start this off, just in case you don't know how this actually will look like towards the end of our video, there's always going to be a index_end inside of the actual section 2 folder, which actually labeled as styling our fonts. So you should be able to see two folders. One is the start and the other one is an end. Now, as we go over to our head section, I'm going to create a tag known as style. So it will be our internal style sheet, because after all, we are doing this just to one page only. So I'm going to go ahead and put in our style tag for our internal style sheet, and we'll put that in there to start things off. Now, the first thing we're going to go after is we're going to try to set a universal font for our overall web page or for our web document. So what we're going to do first is we're going to target the actual body tag. The body tag is an actual HTML element which we can actually target within our CSS. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go right after our body tag by typing in body, followed with our curly brackets. And what we'll be doing here is we're going to set a font family, so we make an overall general look as far as what we want our font to look like. Because by default, it is set to a serif font. So we're going to change that up by making it into a sans serif instead. So what I'm going to do first, I'm going to type in my font family and follow in here. By default, I'm going to set my font to an Arial. And just in case, if our audience does not have the font known as Arial installed on their computer, what we'll be doing here is I'm going to put in a generic font known as sans serif. I put in my double quotes and we'll type in sans-serif. So this will actually activate in the event if Arial is not available on our user's computer. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put my semicolon just to actually end out the set of rules for property for our font family, and the value is in Arial and sans serif. And this will actually conclude for our body tag. What we're going to be doing next is we're going to save out our work. So I'm going to do my file, save. And what I'm going to be doing here is I'm going to switch over to our web browser and actually open this up so that way we can see if our font is being displayed as an Arial instead of the default known as the serif font. So right now we're in our web browser. Now, as you can see here, I just opened up my document, and in fact, the whole entire body of our font has been switched over from the actual default serif font into an Arial font in its place. So as you can see here, everything is in fact working to what it's supposed to be doing within our CSS. So now what we're going to do next, we're going to switch back over to Sublime Text or our text editor to make further edits to our H1. Now we're back inside our text editor, and all we're going to do here, we're going to go right after our H1. We're going to type in the name of our element we're trying to go after, our selector, and we'll put in our curly brackets. Now, what we'll be doing here is that I want to actually make sure that font family will be different from the default setting for our body tag. So what I am going to be doing here, I'm changing the font type to be more of a Times New Roman or a serif font, because that's what I want to actually display it as, to see how it will actually look like on our web browser. So what I'm going to do here, do the same process as before. I'm going to type in my font family, and in here I'm going to type in Times New Roman, follow with a serif font in the event if our audience does not have Times New Roman installed on their computer. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put in my semicolon, close out that rule, and Next thing I want to do, I want to change out the font size of our H1 tag, because after all, by default, it is set to a 24 points for H1 tag for heading 1. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to type in my font dash size, and I'm going to set my points to 30 points, because after all, like I said earlier, the default size for heading 1 is usually set to a 24 points instead. So we're going to actually increase that size from its default. So after that, I'm going to actually make all the letters in my H1 all capital letters. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put in the text transform option or property. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select or set our value for our text transformation from uppercase. I'm going to close out that rule. All right. And then after that, I'm going to set a color for my H1. And I'm going to change up the font color from it being its default black to goldenrod. Reason being because even in my usual class, a lot of my students have a fascination about using goldenrod because it's a very unique color or a very unique name for a color to actually use. So I'm going to use that as well in honor for them. So I'll type in goldenrod for our color. So as I close out that rule. And then last but not least, just like any title for our H1, it should always be centered to our page. So I'm going to do a text align, and I'm going to set it to the center of that H1 element or within the browser itself. And I'm going to close out that rule. And all we want to do, what we're going to do now, is we're going to save out our progress. We're going to do a Control S, or let's go up to do a file, save. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to switch back over to my web browser and see if all these rules that we actually applied to our H1 has in fact is being displayed on our browser. Right now we're back inside of our web browser, and all I'm going to do here, I'm going to press F5 on my keyboard to refresh the page. And as you can see here, it does in fact follow every single rule that we actually applied in our style sheet in our HTML document. Because after all, our font family is set to Times New Roman, our color is set to goldenrod, our font size has increased, it went from 24 to 30, and all the letters in our hello world has in fact been set to a capitalized or uppercase lettering. So everything has been applied as it was said it would inside of our CSS style. So what we're going to do next, we're going to switch back over to Sublime Text or our text editor to actually go ahead and edit out the actual H2 of our HTML document. Right now we're right back inside of Sublime Text, and what we're going to do next is we're going to make a new set of rules, and we'll call this one H2 because we're going to target the H2 element within our document. And the first thing we're going to take care of, I'm going to make sure that I'm going to keep everything else the same. I'm going to go ahead and put my text into small caps. I'm going to go ahead and type in my font dash variant, and I'm going to make sure that I want to set my text to be in small caps. Next, I want to actually make sure that there's an underline for my text so we can see that it is in fact H2. Make it look more of a subheading than the actual heading for our H1 to get some differentiation for it. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to go and do a text decoration, and I'm going to set this to a underline. So that way we actually have two rules in place. We actually have one, our font variant, so we have our lettering will appear in small caps or small capitalized letters, and it should actually have an underline underneath our H2. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to press Control S to save out my work, or I'm going to do a file save to save out my progress. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to switch over to a web browser to see if everything is working just fine. So right now we're back inside of our web browser, and what I'm going to do next, I'm going to press F5 to refresh our screen. And as you can see here, our text has in fact transformed to small caps, and actually have an underline underneath our text on our H2 heading to show the fact that it has, in fact, is working within our CSS. So what we're going to do next or last is we're going to go right after our paragraph tag, and we're going to actually style our text to appear more so in italics. So that way our text will appear more so like a quote than an actual regular text. So here we are inside of our text editor, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to scroll down a little bit, give myself a little bit of space so you can see what we're doing, and I'm going to go hit enter a few times. So that way we're going to target our next selector, which is known as our paragraph tag, which is our P within our HTML document. As you can see here, I typed in my P, put my open and close curly brackets, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set my font style, and for my value, I'm going to set this to italics. So that way, once I save my progress by hitting Control S, or I can go by doing my file save, when we go back into our web browser, we'll see that our text will transform from being a regular text to, in fact, italicized. So switching back over to our web browser, and all I'm going to do here, I'm going to press F5 to refresh my page. And as you can see here, our text has in fact transformed from being a regular text to italics. Now, just to let you all know, you do have the ability to actually use regular HTML elements if you decide to choose to. We can actually go about doing this either way, but you have a lot more control and freedom by using the actual HTML tag known as italics to apply which text you want to appear in italicized if you decide to choose to. But like I said, it's always preference based. If you already know that this body of text will be italicized, you can actually use CSS for that purpose. But to keep everything simple, in my personal opinion, I think it's best to use an actual HTML element. You have more control over the way your text will be formatted. Now, I do hope you find this very useful, and I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.